This video is sponsored by Rocketman. Check out the link in the video description or keep watching to learn more. Suburbs get a bad rap, but can they build good modern downtown? Now, you might not think so, but some Canadian cities aren't doing half bad at building new, modern suburban downtowns. And transit can play a big role in making this happen, or not happen. Let's see how two cities you might never have heard of are stacking up, and how transit might make or break things. Also, why you can't always rely on the on-paper appearance of a transit network. If you like my videos, think about supporting the channel on Patreon. You can do this for just $1 a month, and it really helps. Downtowns are great. There's lots of restaurants, stores, and things to do. But suburbs aren't usually known for them. Having a great downtown also makes your city economically vibrant, and gives you lots of opportunities to grow, both commercially and in terms of arts and culture. Now, Surrey is a city you've probably never heard of, but it's going to be bigger than its neighbor Vancouver, a city you've definitely heard of if you watch this channel, in just the next several decades. Now, the question is, how are they doing this? Well, downtown Surrey, better known as Surrey Central, has been building a lot. Massive amounts of new housing and offices, government buildings, a mall, and the two largest universities on the west coast of Canada, as well as a major college and several government headquarters. Now, there is a story to be told about Surrey that is less positive, and that has to do with displacement. Of course, what you're probably quite curious about is transit, and Surrey did at one point have a major transit plan to connect the entire city, with light rail. But, as it turns out, Surrey's light rail plans, which back in the day I actually supported before I really got into the transit space in a big way, ended up dying. Building light rail would have been incredibly expensive, but compared to just building rapid buses with dedicated lanes and some nice stops, the value proposition wasn't great. Again, the system would have been incredibly expensive, but the travel time improvement would have been negligible over buses. That leaves Surrey connected to the Vancouver SkyTrain network and with a couple of rapid bus lines today. Now, let's look at a comparison on the other side of the country. Mississauga, a city near Toronto, is a bigger city in a bigger region, with better bus transit than Surrey. Both follow a similar suburban sprawl model that's moved to townhouses and higher density, with various town centers often centered around malls that have even greater levels of density. That said, Mississauga does have a lot more random high-rises all over the place, so its density is higher. The difference isn't only related to transit. Downtown Mississauga has less and less impressive institutions. A new hospital is being built, but it's going to be far away from the downtown, down here on Ontario Street. There are more suburban office parks throughout Mississauga along its various highways, which means that office concentrates in the downtown less, and I would argue there's a lot less ambition. Surrey's motto is literally "the future lives here," and the city actively talks about overtaking Vancouver as the West Coast's most important city. Whether it will actually achieve that mindshare is unclear, but Surrey will probably overtake Vancouver in population in the next decade or so. Of course, the biggest differentiator though is transit, and I'm going to tell you all about it after a quick message from our sponsor. When you're passionate about transit like me, which if you're watching this channel you probably are, you probably love the convenience and flexibility riding transit gives us. Whether that means being able to catch a frequent bus, passing right outside your front door, or sitting down in a comfy train and getting some work done along the way. But more often than not, you might find yourself commuting from point A to B and getting a little bit bored. The perils of underground transit without cell reception, or just waiting for a train with not much in terms of entertainment. Fret not, this is where today's sponsor Rocketman comes in. The Rocketman team is always dreaming up new and inventive ways to make traveling on transit more exciting, and now they found a solution for transit doldrums in the form of cold, hard cash back. Introducing Rocketman Rewards, the casual way to earn money while taking transit by answering real-time polls with thrilling questions like whether pineapple truly belongs on pizza, it doesn't, or if dogs make better pets than cats. Think of it as an anonymous way to speak your mind while earning money in the process. Check out Rocketman using the link in the description below and start earning cash back on your commute. Now, as I already mentioned, there are a number of factors that make downtown Mississauga less compelling than downtown Surrey, but there is one that is just impossible to get around. There is no easy way to get to it from downtown Toronto on public transit. To be perfectly clear, you can ride a bus from downtown Toronto to downtown Mississauga, but it's not incredibly frequent, it's expensive, it's a bus, and it's also at the whims of traffic, which can be highly variable, making the trip really inconsistent. At the same time, to be perfectly clear, Mississauga residents do travel to Toronto. The city has 2 commuter rail lines, and much of its bus system is oriented around delivering residents to the city next door. But still, downtown to downtown on transit isn't great, and the best routes will require you to pay several different fares and transfer, possibly multiple times, using as many as 3 different transit systems. Now, you might be thinking, well, maybe letting people go to downtown Toronto would hurt Mississauga, right? Well, Surrey doesn't seem to be following that model. The SkyTrain from downtown Surrey to downtown Vancouver is just 35 minutes, and you can catch it every 6 minutes for most of the day. It's just as fast as driving with 0 traffic and way faster during rush hour. You see, having your downtown accessible from various locations, especially the well-connected regional center, makes it easy for people from all over to get there, and draws demand, which grows your downtown and brings you economic development, which grows your downtown. Well, sure, some people will go to work and play in the bigger city, others will come the other way. There's also a directionality. Downtown Vancouver is odd because it's in the corner of the region for historic reasons. Surrey is much more central. Downtown Mississauga is not in the center of the Toronto region, but it's closer than downtown Toronto for millions of people west of the city, so it still has a massive potential market, probably much larger than downtown Surrey's. However, in Mississauga, whose downtown is almost the exact same distance from downtown Toronto as Surrey is from downtown Vancouver, it's going to take you literally double the time to take transit from downtown to downtown, and it will also cost more. Now, as I mentioned before, not all is bad. Mississauga has better local bus coverage, probably owing to the fact that it has almost double the population of Surrey and has much more contiguous development. The city also has a 24-hour transit network, a really nice BRT corridor to Canada's largest airport, which is a massive employment zone, and a network of express bus routes. But while Mississauga wins on paper, Surrey wins in reality. You see, part of the problem is that transit and road networks need to feed your downtown, not only to help grow it, but because especially in small transit systems, being able to transfer between various lines at a central point is incredibly useful. But Mississauga is pursuing a lot of transit projects with no apparent central strategy for forming a coherent network. In Surrey, the downtown is fed by a major highway as well as direct road and transit connections to major subcenters within the city. BRT connects to the south and the east, and the major southeastern-oriented corridor is getting SkyTrain. Thus, a very large portion of the Metro Vancouver population, especially the population south of the Fraser River, can get to downtown Surrey with a single-seat ride-on transit. Now, Mississauga does have an under-construction north-south light rail line, which connects several commuter rail lines and the neighboring city. But since it's fairly slow, in many cases, just getting on the train to Toronto could be attractive if you don't live right on it. At the same time, few are likely to travel to Mississauga from the dense regional core because, as I mentioned before, there's no convenient link. You always have to ride and transfer between various other lines, and even if they could, without the presence of a large concentration of offices, healthcare facilities, or universities, there wouldn't be a huge incentive to go to downtown Mississauga. Of course, many more transit projects are happening, but they don't fix all of the problems. Better service on the regional rail lines doesn't make them go where they don't. And a new BRT east-west through the city's south is largely duplicative of a much faster regional rail line anyways. And the city's Transitway BRT corridor, which connects to the airport, doesn't even continue through the densest part of the city where buses need to contend with city streets and traffic. Now, to be fair, you will also be able to get onto the Toronto subway system's Line 5 when its western extension brings it to the end of the Transitway in the early 2030s. But this still means a long ride on at least 2 subway lines after getting off a bus to go to most places in the neighboring city, including downtown. Even if and when the Transitway meets its ultimate fate and is converted to rail, as has always been intended, you'll still need to make a long and relatively slow rail trip before transferring. Of course, part of the problem with Mississauga is that it's a grid. All roads simply do not lead downtown, and this is why the current plan of a bunch of often slow and disconnected cords isn't very useful. This is why Mississauga really needs to think a little bigger, and with a few relatively small projects, it could make things so much better. The first is fixing the Transitway by extending it through the downtown. With this corridor converted to rail, the city will have a reliable and fast east-west link right through the center to the airport, and through running all the way to Midtown Toronto and beyond might even be possible Japan style, but with worse trains. The second is the rail diversion of the Milton GO line proposed by Dr. Jonathan English and Uday Schultz in a regional rail report. The project would divert the Milton line through downtown Mississauga, with which should be a short tunnel. This would mean that not only would you be able to access downtown Toronto in a golden 35 minutes, but you could also get to Line 2 of the Toronto subway easily, which means that along with the Transitway, Mississauga City Centre would have one-seat rail access to downtown north and south, as well as Midtown Toronto and the airport. access that mirrors the wonderful connectivity of the Scarburian backwaters of Kennedy Station. There is a bigger conversation to be had here about how Toronto has terribly developed places with great connectivity and highly developed places with terrible connectivity. Better yet, these two projects would give Mississauga a triangle transfer, distributing loads between the north-south LRT, which ought to be sped up with some grade separations over the years, the Transitway, and the Milton Line at 3 different major transfer stations.